Tracking an unidentified object. Repeat. Unidentified object in orbit. Designation unclear. Possible debris or unknown satellite. Wait, hold on. Oh my god, what is that?
For as long as humans have looked up at the night sky, we've wondered what might be out there. Entire civilizations built myths around the stars. Ancient astronomers charted the skies, hoping to understand our place in the universe. But what if something up there has been watching us all along? According to a persistent story that has circulated for decades, an unknown object has been orbiting Earth silently, possibly for thousands of years, long before the first satellites, long before the space race, and long before humanity ever reached orbit. The object eventually became known as the Black Knight satellite, a supposed spacecraft orbiting Earth, quietly observing our planet from above. Some claim it's an ancient alien probe, a relic left behind by an advanced civilization. Others believe the story is simply a misunderstanding, a strange object mistaken for something far more mysterious. But like many enduring mysteries, the story becomes far more interesting when we begin looking at the evidence. In 1998, astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour were conducting a routine mission. During the mission, a photograph was taken, and in that photograph, something unusual appeared. A dark, irregular object drifting above the Earth, not attached to the shuttle, not clearly identifiable, just floating there. At first glance, it certainly looks strange. The object appears irregular, almost artificial, and floating alone in space. But as with many mysteries that gain traction online, things are rarely that simple. Because when we begin tracing the origins of this story, we quickly discover something unexpected. The Black Knight satellite theory didn't start in 1998. In fact, some believe the first clues appeared more than a century earlier. In 1899, while conducting experiments with wireless radio transmission, one of the most brilliant inventors in history reported something unusual. Strange signals. Signals that some would later interpret as coming from beyond our planet. And that is where this story truly begins. To understand the mystery of the Black Knight satellite, we have to go back to the very beginning. In 1899, at a remote laboratory in Colorado Springs, Nikola Tesla was conducting some of the most ambitious electrical experiments ever attempted. Tesla was trying to solve a problem that obsessed him for years: wireless communication. The idea that information, or even energy, could be transmitted through the air itself, using enormous electrical coils and highly sensitive receivers. He began monitoring the radio environment around the Earth, and during those experiments, Tesla reported something unusual. Strange signals, repeating pulses, arriving at regular intervals, signals that he could not easily explain. In a later interview, Tesla suggested that the transmissions might be intelligent in origin, not random noise, but something structured. At the time, radio technology was still in its infancy, and the idea that signals might originate from another world captured the imagination of the public. But whether Tesla had discovered something extraordinary or simply misunderstood natural radio phenomena remains an open question. What matters is that this moment planted the first seed of the mystery. For decades, the story remained little more than speculation. Tesla's strange signals were debated, reinterpreted, and often exaggerated. But everything changed in the middle of the 20th century when humanity entered the space age. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth.
Today, a new moon is in the sky, a 23-inch metal sphere placed in orbit by a Russian rocket. Here, an artist's conception of how the feat was accomplished. A three-stage rocket. Number one, the booster, in the class of an intercontinental missile. Its weight estimated at 50 tons. The smaller second stage took over at 5,000 miles an hour and carried on to the highest point reached. 500 miles up, the artificial moon is boosted to a speed counterbalancing the pull of gravity and released. You are hearing the actual signals transmitted by the Earth-circling satellite, one of the great scientific feats of the age.
Достигший под руководством коммунистической партии величайшего прогресса, удалось, выведя на орбиту спутник, впервые проникнуть за пределы земной атмосферы. Четвертый день весь мир был поражен успехами советской науки и техники. Наша ракета достигла невиданной скорости. Около 8000 метров в секунду.
And almost overnight, the skies above our planet became crowded with machines, military satellites, scientific instruments, secret reconnaissance platforms. During the early years of space exploration, tracking technology was still limited. Objects were sometimes detected in orbit before their origin was fully understood. And in that uncertainty, rumors began to spread. Reports of unidentified satellites, objects that appeared in orbital calculations but could not be linked to any known launch. Most of these reports were eventually explained, but a few lingered, and slowly, a new idea began to emerge. What if something had been there, long before Sputnik? By the early days of the Cold War, the world had become deeply suspicious of anything happening in orbit. Both the United States and the Soviet Union were secretly launching satellites, often without public announcements. Military observers began tracking unknown objects in space. Some were classified projects, others were misidentified debris. But in newspapers, magazines, and eventually the early internet, a different interpretation began to take shape. The fragments of several unrelated stories, Tesla's mysterious signals, Cold War secrecy, and strange photographs taken in orbit. Slowly, these pieces were woven together until they formed a single narrative, a mysterious object, orbiting Earth, watching, waiting, an object that some believed had been there for centuries, and eventually, it would be given a name, the Black Knight satellite. To understand how that image was captured, we need to look closely at the mission behind it. In December of 1998, the Space Shuttle Endeavour launched as part of the STS-88 mission. It was the first mission dedicated to assembling the International Space Station. The crew consisted of 5 NASA astronauts and 1 Russian cosmonaut, working together on a joint international operation. Their primary objective was to deliver the Unity module, a connecting node designed to link future components of the station. At the time of launch, another module was already in orbit, Zarya, a Russian-built control module, launched just weeks earlier. The mission required the shuttle to rendezvous with Zarya in space, a complex orbital maneuver that demanded precise timing and positioning. Once in range, the crew used the shuttle's 50-foot robotic arm to capture the module as it moved through orbit. Zarya was then carefully maneuvered and aligned with Unity. The 2 modules were connected in space, forming the first structural element of the International Space Station. To complete the assembly, astronauts conducted a series of spacewalks. Working outside the spacecraft, they installed cables, electrical connections, data links, and structural components necessary for the station to function. Additional tasks included adjusting external equipment, securing handrails, deploying and correcting antenna positions, and preparing the modules for future expansion. Throughout the mission, every stage of the operation was recorded in detail. Cameras were used continuously, both inside and outside the spacecraft. Photographs documented the assembly process, the condition of the modules, and the surrounding environment in orbit. These images were not taken for public release, but for engineering analysis, mission verification, and long-term documentation. Over the course of nearly 12 days in space, the crew completed all primary objectives of the mission. They successfully connected Unity and Zarya, activated key systems, and established the foundation of what would become a permanently inhabited structure in orbit. And among the hundreds of images captured during those operations, 1 photograph would later stand out from all the others. Theories about the Black Knight satellite range from an alien observer to an ancient extraterrestrial probe left behind by an advanced civilization. For years, these ideas kept the mystery alive, but when the evidence is examined more closely, a far simpler explanation begins to emerge. The object seen in the STS-88 photograph is most widely believed to have been a piece of thermal insulation lost during a routine spacewalk. Not an ancient machine, not an alien satellite, but a fragment of space debris captured in a way that made it appear far more mysterious than it really was. And maybe that is what makes this story so fascinating. The Black Knight satellite may not be an alien spacecraft, but the legend itself reveals something just as interesting: how easily mystery can grow from misread signals, isolated event, and a single image taken out of context.